Tonight, a new tropical storm punishing the south with record temps and wildfires scorching the northeast and the west. We've got our teams on every angle, including the staggering cost of the climate crisis. Then how police finally caught a man accused of 3 murders, now in custody after a days-long manhunt. Plus, check out this video of an FBI raid on the Oakland mayor's house. You're about to see it. What we're learning about the investigation days after a recall push. And President Biden about to head to Camp David in just a couple of hours tonight for debate prep, with that showdown just 1 week away. What sources are telling our team about how both candidates are getting ready, and it may surprise you. Then how a low-flying Southwest plane basically skimmed a suburb of Oklahoma City, scaring folks there. We'll tell you more about that. And TikTok, for the first time, laying out its official rationale as to why it shouldn't get banned in this country, even though Congress may do just that. We're breaking down what it all means for your For You page later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we're coming on the air tonight as Tropical Storm Alberto turns deadly, washing out parts of Texas, killing 3 people after it made landfall. Nearly 2 feet of water. You're looking at some of that here, that landfall. 20 inches of water dumping on Texas and Louisiana, with tornado threats in some spots and water thigh high, too. You can see it here with these folks wading or trying to through the flooding. Our teams along the Texas Gulf say some folks on the beaches there are basically trapped. There's so much water, they can't get to their cars. And then radiating out of the center of that bullseye, dramatic, record-setting early heat, making for brutal conditions for the firefighters trying to get a handle on that deadly wildfire in New Mexico, burning out of control. 2 people confirmed dead here, thousands more evacuating. And that state is not catching a break. Look at this. At least 18 people are in the hospital after a huge dust storm there. You see it in the sky, led to a whole bunch of crashes on a highway. President Biden, in just the last hour, green-lighting more federal help for hard-hit New Mexico. We've got our team all over every angle. George Solis in New York, Dana Griffin in California. But we start with Guad Venegas in Texas, where, Guad, some people obviously are trapped in this storm still. Bring us up to speed on where things stand.
Hallie, so we're in Rockport. You can see we still have a high tide affecting this part of the state. Everything you see behind me is part of a roadway. You can see the water coming in and getting real close to some of these properties. So we had a few different things, right? We had the winds, the heavy rain that caused flooding all up and down the coast. We also had some homes that suffered from the high winds, and we've now been confirmed that there was a tornado here. Earlier today, we went to a home and spoke to a couple that showed us some of that damage they said they suffered yesterday when a tornado warning came to their phones. They said they heard the wind damage the outside part of the home, and it actually took part of the roof in their bedroom. That's here in Rockport. And then, of course, south of us in Corpus Christi, we were there yesterday. We saw a lot of flooding in the marina. We still have a lot of roadways like these that are flooded. And what you're looking at to my right, that's not the Gulf. We still have a barrier island that separates us and the Gulf of Mexico, just so you have an idea of where we're at. So a lot of these communities have that barrier island that does help protect with the water coming in. But of course, there's other communities on those barrier islands that are also underwater. But the worst part of the storm, the forecast indicates, already passed. We're going to hear from some individuals who were in this area that flooded.
The waves just blow you away. It's mind-boggling.
It was hard to walk in, especially down this stretch. The current, you could feel it.
We've just never been through anything like this before, and we're just going to have to take it one day at a time, I guess.
And, you know, one of the things about flooded areas, I'm standing right on this street, right? And there's not a lot of water here, a few inches, but every time the water comes in, it's pushing me a little bit. The power of the water in flooded areas, this is, of course, part of the tide, but even when you go to communities where the water's a foot or 2 feet, you step in there, and those currents are always powerful. They're always dangerous, not just for somebody that's trying to walk through it, but also individuals trying to drive through these areas. These were the things that were worrying authorities, not just here, but in other communities, especially in Corpus Christi, one of the larger cities here that also had a lot of roadways that were flooded. But as I mentioned, the worst part of the storm has already passed. We do have some of these winds, and there's still some areas that are still flooded, Hallie.
Guad Venegas, we see it all there behind you. Guad, thank you for being there. Appreciate it. Let's get to George Solis, who's live for us in New York, where that heat dome is just capping the city where you are. Record temperatures for this early in the season, as it is now the first day of summer. Talk us through it.
Yeah, Hallie, even the sturdy New York Central Park pigeons seeking shade from this heat dome that has been blanketing the area for the last several days. It's not just the actual temperature, it's those feel-like temperatures that really do the damage. And of course, some of the risks that are associated with that, your heat stroke, your heat exhaustion, your hypothermia. Here, people in the park have been taking those precautions, staying in the shade, drinking water, and wearing those loose-fit clothing. We've also been sort of listening to people advocate for the elderly and those people that are pregnant, which is also a very critical group when the temperatures are this sweltering. Nevertheless, though, a lot of people still out and about today, even though they are taking those precautions. I actually caught up with a few people here in Central Park trying to beat the heat. Here's what they told me.
I think we've been popping into buildings more often than we normally would, just trying to take advantage of the AC. We're actually visiting from out of town, so, we were a little concerned when we saw what the weather had forecasted.
I just moved and I don't have an AC in my new place, so I've been struggling. I was supposed to get here today and it got pushed back a few days, so we're going to see how I'm going to survive.
Yeah, no AC. I have no idea how that person is doing. And I've actually seen a lot of runners out here too, Hallie, who are just sweltering in this heat. Many of them have water. Couldn't be me, but obviously some people feel that they can do it in this heat. Of course, the city's taking those precautions. Those cooling centers are open. Some of the schools here in New York City actually dismissing early today, serving only cold meals. Just really gives you a sense of how seriously the city is taking this heat health emergency. Many just hoping for some of that relief, even if they are used to this heat, because again, it takes a little bit to acclimate to this heat. So many hoping that those cooler temps are just around the horizon.
George Solis, thank you. I want to get to Dana Griffin now because, Dana, that heat can be downright dangerous for everybody, including those first responders out there trying to get a handle on that horrific wildfire in New Mexico. It is still not at all contained, 0%. I imagine that part of what's making them so hard to fight, not just the terrain, not just the region, but also the temperatures.
Absolutely. You've got triple-digit temps earlier in the week. You also had a fierce storm that rolled in that dumped 2 to 4 inches of rain, which led to flash flooding in those burn scar areas because of the fire. You don't have the sort of infrastructure in the ground to soak up that moisture. You're looking at images of these burnt out shells of homes and vehicles. This is the damage that is caused by these two fast-moving wildfires. It is the South Fork wildfire and also the Salt wildfire that has burned some 23,000 acres. 1,400 homes and buildings have been destroyed, and we've learned that 2 people have died. And one family member of one of the victims says that he was packed and ready to evacuate, waiting for someone to pick him up. But that person got stopped by a roadblock, and unfortunately that person was found deceased on the ground. And here's the problem with this sort of weather and the uncertainty of how long this fire is going to burn. It's been burning since Monday, 0% contained. There's obviously a major concern there. You've got thousands of people evacuated. We know the governor has asked for federal assistance, and I was just kind of checking my phone because we've been waiting to see if President Biden had issued or had approved a federal disaster declaration. And according to our NBC affiliate KOB, they posted just minutes ago that Biden approved that federal disaster declaration for the Rio Doso wildfire area. That is that area right in between these two fires that is burning. And you've got people who had to, evacuate and take as little as they could. And it's obviously very concerning. You've got thousands of people displaced. And even the governor said that this sort of cleanup and repair is going to take a really long time. Hallie?
Dana Griffin live for us there out west. Lots to watch tonight. Dana, thank you. Right now in the Midwest, a man's in custody in Arkansas after a multi-day, multi-state, multi-agency manhunt for him that started down in Alabama. Arkansas State Police say 50-year-old Stacey Drake was found in the woods about 50 miles outside Little Rock, suspected in connection with 3 homicides in Oklahoma from 2 separate carjackings this week. He's also wanted in Tuscaloosa for a separate murder back in May. Listen.
I don't know when we will get him back. He will eventually be in the Tuscaloosa County Jail. He will eventually answer for these crimes, whether by pleading guilty or standing trial.
Priya Sridhar is joining us now. And Priya, this is the conclusion, it seems, to this very intense manhunt. Talk us through it.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Well, as you mentioned, this man actually went on for weeks since May when he was connected to that murder in Tuscaloosa, and it went on until today when he was finally apprehended in the woods about an hour northwest of Arkansas. But the one thing we do know now is that 50-year-old Stacey Lee Drake is now facing charges for 4 different murders. He's been named as a suspect in 3 of them and a person of interest in 1 of them. But he also has a very extensive criminal history. He's a convicted felon. He's been convicted of carjackings, assault, and robbery, and he spent time in federal prison. Let's take a listen to what the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Department captain had to say about his history.
He's got an extensive history in multiple states, Arizona, Oklahoma, the old cases from Alabama. He was also a federal inmate at different points in his career, and there were outstanding pending federal charges on him for violating his parole at this time.
And so Stacey Lee Drake actually used a different name in the Tuscaloosa murder, according to the Sheriff's Department. And that's why they say that it was difficult to sort of track him down for a while. But he did murder someone, according to the police, and took their car to Oklahoma, where he was then involved in another murder, police there say, in El Reno, Oklahoma. He then traveled 200 miles and murdered 2 more people, according to the police there, and that was on Tuesday. He then took that car to Arkansas, and it was discovered at a Motel 6. That was the last time he was seen on surveillance video. And then for the last 2 days, the authorities have been looking for him. They thought that he had stayed in that area. They believe that he bought camping gear and was essentially in the woods. And so they were finally able to apprehend him today. And Hallie, I just want to say that I was able to speak to the son of one of those victims, and he said that he's obviously happy that this man is off the streets now, and he just feels terrible that since his father died in Tuscaloosa, that 3 more people had to die in connection to Stacey Lee Drake. Hallie?
Priya Sridhar, thank you very much. Tonight, dozens of people arrested during those huge Columbia University protests back in April have just been told they are not going to get prosecuted. I want to show you some of these folks speaking outside court after the DA's office said in just the last few hours they don't have enough evidence to bring cases against them. But the effects of these college protests still being felt by some schools. Look at Emerson College, now planning layoffs because enrollment has gone down, and the school's blaming partly student protests. Writing in an email obtained by the Boston Globe that the staff reduction is because of those protests targeting our yield events and campus tours, and negative press and social media generated from the demonstrations and arrests, as well as national enrollment trends and issues with federal student aid. Antonia Hilton is outside court where those Columbia hearings have been taking place. She's joining us now. Antonia, this was, I want to say, the lead story on so many national news broadcasts for days. What was happening with these pro-Palestinian demonstrations that were in some ways taking over college campuses coast to coast. Now, a pretty significant update from one of the schools at the epicenter of this.
That's right, Hallie. Some people here on the ground have been a bit surprised by this. So 31 of the 46 people charged in connection to the occupation of Hamilton Hall have had their charges dismissed entirely. Another 14 were told basically that their charges would be dropped if they had good behavior for the next 6 months. But they refused that deal. So those 14 will be back in court in late July, so just a couple weeks away. There's really only one person who it looks like is going to face major consequences, and that's a guy named James Carlson. Our colleague Tom Winter covered him extensively. He was the guy whose face was plastered all over the place in the days after the occupation. He is described as an outside agitator by many people, not an affiliated Columbia student. And he's the only person who is right now facing some of the serious charges, like a flag burning, for example. And so, you know, for many students, that means that now really the remaining piece of this is the internal discussion, the hearings that are going to happen at Columbia. Are they suspended? Are they expelled? Are they able to return to school at the end of the summer? That's what they're waiting to hear about.
What about Emerson? We talked about the president of the school blaming partly, right, not entirely, but partly the protests for declining enrollment here. Do we think Emerson is an isolated case or maybe indicative of a broader trend? Do we know yet?
You know, Hallie, it's an interesting question because, you know, while Emerson has written about this, the Boston Globe was able to obtain information about it. schools are talking a lot about these issues, but they haven't yet been able to demonstrate necessarily that these trends are connected to the protests. What we do know for sure is that administrators at many schools, from the Ivy League all the way through, are saying that they're having some trouble raising money. So as they go out to alums and ask for people to donate, to contribute to the endowment or different programs to help them build a new building on campus, that's where they're running into issues, where there are alums who are unhappy with the way that those administrations have managed the protests, the encampments at their schools, and now they're holding back. And that's expected to affect some of the programming and the opportunities that they're able to provide students this year and maybe for years to come.
Antonia Hilton live for us there in New York. Antonia, good to see you. Thanks. Some breaking news coming into us tonight from the Bay Area, with the FBI and other federal agencies raiding the Oakland mayor's home. Want to show you now some video of that. Here you can see some of the activity there at the bottom of your screen. What's the reason behind it? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. Tom Winter is tip of the spear on that effort. What do we know, Tom?
Right, you talk about Sheng Tao is the mayor of Oakland, facing a recall effort, which is not connected to this, Hallie, or at least not believed to be. You know, it kind of is summarizes the whole Oakland experience right now for the residents there, where their district attorney, where their mayor, both undergoing recall efforts. That stemming from issues of crime initially, even though crime in Oakland is down this year. Specific to this search, we actually don't know a lot. So to take the audience a little bit behind the curtain of how we do what we do, typically, when a search like this happens and you see documents being taken out of a house, you see the evidence response team there, and there are other federal law enforcement agencies that are believed to be a part of this, you start to look back at what are some of the stories that we've done, that other news organizations have done over the past several months, and could there be a tripwire there as it pertains to breaking federal law? And that's an area for us to dig into, and we start calling around to various attorneys and all the different types of folks we would speak to for something like this and kind of come up with a subject matter. It's not so clear in this instance what that thing might be that would lead us to at least have some sort of a sense of what this search is all about. But as I mentioned in the beginning, this is really a challenge for Oakland, which has been going through, obviously, some very difficult times. They're losing their baseball team. Crime, as I mentioned, is down this year. Robberies, which were a significant concern, have dropped fairly dramatically there, over 50%, as the California Highway Patrol and other police agencies have been assisting local police there. But it still remains a problem. It's still too high in a lot of people's eyes there. And this is going to be an ongoing concern for them. Whenever we've seen a politician in a mayoral office get to this type of attention and this type of heat, it typically means that it's something that becomes a distraction for that particular city for some time. Of course, always important to remember, Hallie, and always important to keep in mind in these instances, just because somebody's been searched doesn't mean they've been charged with a crime, doesn't mean that they necessarily will be charged with a crime. It's possible others around them, or it's possible no charges could ever be filed. Rudy Giuliani getting searched by the FBI in New York, great example. No charges were ever filed in that investigation.
That's true. Tom Winter, good point. Thank you very much. I know you'll keep us posted if we get any more. So in just the next couple of hours, President Biden is going to head to Camp David, where sources say he's planning to hunker down for the next few days to get ready for the first presidential debate of the season. And former President Trump, he's doing his own don't call it prep with policy talks with folks including Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who's on the possible VP pick shortlist and who's at a fundraiser with Mr. Trump even as we speak. That debate a week from today, it's going to be head-to-head, mano a mano, a one-on-one. Well, you get the point, because CNN says RFK Jr. did not qualify to get on stage, failing to meet requirements on state ballot access and polling. Kennedy calls the exclusion undemocratic and cowardly, but doesn't seem like there's much he can do about it. NBC's Monica Alba is ready for 7 days from now, Monica. So give us a preview of the conversation over the next 6 days, which is what these two candidates are doing to get ready from what will be, and let's put it in context here, the biggest primetime moment of this election season yet.
And coming months earlier than it has in past cycles. So certainly, Hallie, a lot to watch for here. And we know that President Biden, this is the first time he'll be facing former President Trump as the current president of the United States. So he can use some of the perks that incumbency will bring, like going to Camp David, like past presidents have done to prepare for these kinds of debates. He's going to be heading there tonight. And as you mentioned, he will be there, we expect, for much of the next week. And of course, he still has his day job, so he's still going to be doing meetings related to the presidency and getting national security updates and briefings. And he could still potentially do an event or two or depart Camp David for something to make remarks if the White House feels like he needs to do that. But for the most part, we expect him to really be a part of these intensive sessions with somebody who is a familiar name, probably, which is his former White House Chief of Staff, Ron Klain, who's really going to be leading the prep in addition to a lot of really close advisors. And in terms of the Biden campaign strategy here, they say they really want to lay out this contrasting vision with former President Trump, but they are preparing for the really unscripted moments too. And those are some of the ones we are usually talking about and focusing on the most the next day. Now, for former President Trump's part, as you alluded to and as you've been reporting on for days now, Hallie, there is no formal prep to speak of, but at the same time, we understand from the former president's team that there are these informal policy sessions that are going to be going on topics that they expect will come up. And then they also point to what he does regularly, those long rallies. They say that that counts as his prep, and they claim and have been talking about really these super unsubstantiated things. The former president, for now weeks, has been trying to argue that the current president will somehow be on some kind of substances or drugs at this debate, again, without providing any kind of proof for that. And that's something he will probably continue to point to leading up to the debate. Hallie.
Ahead of this debate, Monica, this issue of so-called cheap fakes has really burst onto the scene in a big way. That is the Biden camp's term for these clips from opponents that recontextualize videos without AI, without much editing. That's why they're not deep fakes. They're, again, cheap fakes. There's this video from the D-Day ceremony in France. Now, on the left, we're showing you, pulled from social media, what looks like the president nearly doubling over. That clip on the left stops there. If you play the full clip, it shows President Biden looking for his chair. Seconds later, obviously, you can see it on the right, he sits down in it. Then you have this video from the G7 summit in Italy, with one video shared by groups, including the RNC, suggesting the president may have just wandered off. You see that video. In the full version, if you let it play, he's greeting parachuters who had just landed. Now, this one went so viral that even the British Prime Minister stepped in to defend President Biden. And then at the White House's Juneteenth celebration, commenters called out the president for what they described, this is it here, kind of a strange non-response during a concert at the White House. The White House has not specifically addressed this one, but talk us through the dynamics at play, Monica, and what you're hearing from the various camps about this.
Yeah, and you know, this is something that the White House and the Biden campaign, both of them have become far more vocal on this. Yeah. You know, in the past, there would be videos maybe similar to this from similar accounts that are amplified by the former president that they wouldn't necessarily weigh in on or touch. And now they're saying that because there have been so many in recent weeks, they feel like they need to. And another example, adding to that list that you just pointed out, was something that we saw when President Biden was with former President Obama at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, where former President Obama walks over to President Biden and the two men walk off the stage together. And really, the White House is just trying to point to this as saying that's something that isn't edited, but it is, to your point, not put in the correct context. And it is deceptive in what the accounts that are trying to portray this as an elderly man and the president needing help or needing to be guided by former President Obama. They simply say that that is wrong. And what you are seeing from the Biden campaign and their social media accounts is they're now pointing to moments where they feel that Donald Trump has made mistakes in public, whether it be different kinds of events and where he has confused different names, or when he has really tripped over his remarks or made claims that they feel are so outlandish and ridiculous that they want to be highlighting those. So they have now made a more concerted effort to pinpoint those on their social media accounts. They're even putting together montages and amplifying those of times when they say Donald Trump appears confused or like he's wandering off a stage in recent years. They're pointing to the fact that at some point recently, Donald Trump called his White House doctor Ronnie Johnson instead of Ronnie Jackson. And they're also just really trying to say that there are plenty of instances where there are questions that are raised about Donald Trump's own behavior, even if that is what the flip side is trying to do about President Biden. Hallie.
Monica Alba, boy, a lot to get into today. Thank you for walking us through it all. Appreciate it, friend. Let's talk about tonight for the first time, TikTok officially laying out its argument for why it shouldn't get banned in this country in what is really the company's opening shot in its battle with Congress. You've got TikTok releasing details about several confidential meetings it had with the feds in a new legal brief that's just been made public. Meetings where TikTok says it tried to address the Biden administration's concerns about the company's Chinese-based ownership. These legal docs are detailing how the federal government, according to TikTok, allegedly stopped talking to them, basically ceased any substantive engagement back in September of 2022 without explaining why. All of it laying out the start of what is going to be a huge legal showdown between the federal government and one of the biggest and most popular apps in this country. All of it, of course, after the president signed into law a bill that would basically force TikTok's China-based owner to sell off the company or else see it be shut down. Danny Savalos is joining us now. It's kind of complicated here, but the bottom line is back when this was first passed, right, back when this was passed by Congress and signed into law not long ago, we all said, huge deal. It was very significant that this was now the law, but that TikTok was going to use every weapon in its arsenal to fight back. We are now seeing a preview of some of those weapons that TikTok will use.
We are. And really their main argument is that this legislation is couched as a forced divestiture. In other words, forcing TikTok to sell, but it really is suppressing speech in TikTok's view. They say it violates the First Amendment. They say it violates equal protection and it even constitutes what's called a bill of attainder. In other words, Congress passing a law that just says, hey, this particular person, or in this case a company, is wrong, is doing something criminal.
Danny Savalos, more to watch on that one. Thank you. I want to get to some breaking news here just in the last hour. Reports of a close call involving a Southwest flight in Oklahoma. So apparently this plane flew super low over a suburb of Oklahoma City, basically hundreds of feet above the town, scaring a whole bunch of folks. Some people were like, what is going on? Look at this. NBC's Tom Costello has more. We're showing the tracking from FlightAware. Explain to us what we're looking at, Tom.
So this was Southwest Flight 4069. It was coming from Las Vegas into Oklahoma City at about 12:30 a.m., midnight 30 local time just this morning. And suddenly, as it was coming into runway 13, it came in way too low. In fact, so low, 525 feet off the ground, that low altitude warnings were triggered inside the control tower there at the Oklahoma City airport. They radioed the pilot and said, is everything okay? The pilot said, yes, going around. They circled around, had normal altitude, normal speed, and then landed on a different runway and everybody was safe. But the question is, why was this plane, in the words of NBC News aviation expert Captain John Cox, coming in very low and very slow when it was 8 miles out from the runway? Far too low and far too slow when you're so far out. The FAA says it's investigating. Southwest Airlines, in a statement to NBC News, says, in fact, that it is working with the FAA to understand and address any irregularities with the aircraft's approach to the airport. All Southwest planes are 737s, so the question really is not a matter of equipment. The matter is what might have been going on in the cockpit that led that crew to come in at an altitude and a speed that was clearly not optimal given the circumstances. Again, 12:30 in the morning, landing from Las Vegas into Oklahoma City.
Tom Costello, very interesting. Thanks very much for breaking that down for us. Coming up, the very real warning about apparently very fake weight loss drugs. How to make sure that what you're getting is the real deal. Plus, if you're traveling for the 4th of July, you are really, truly not alone. AAA's record predictions after a break. In just the last couple hours, LA County officials say a USC student will not be charged in stabbing and killing a man on Greek Row. The district attorney says his office thinks the student acted out of genuine fear for his life after the student confronted a man Monday night outside a frat house. Police say he saw the man breaking into a car and told police he said he had a gun. Liz Kreutz is joining us now, and we're seeing a little bit of where that happened, that map at USC's frat row. What else do we know about who's involved here and where this goes now?
Well, hey, Hallie, I just got back from the courthouse where we learned that charges were going to be dropped against this 19-year-old University of Southern California student, Ivan Gallegos. Police say that he was with two friends on Greek Row when they saw this man, a homeless man, breaking into a car. Some kind of altercation happened. Ivan told police that this homeless man had said that he had a gun, and so Ivan had a knife and allegedly stabbed this man multiple times fatally. There had been a question about whether or not this was self-defense or an act of aggression. Ivan Gallegos, the student, had said this was self-defense. And, Hallie, we've now learned that the DA has decided that that is the case. He says in a statement, George Gascon, the district attorney, says, we believe that Mr. Gallegos' actions were driven by a genuine fear for his life and the lives of others. Our heart goes out to this deceased family's friends and everyone impacted by this tragic incident. I know that the family of Ivan Gallegos was there at the courthouse and then making their way to the jail where he should be released this afternoon. As for what's next, Hallie, I think essentially this is over now, although you could see some kind of legal action potentially from Xavier Surf's family. This is the homeless man that was killed. His mother has been posting on social media and says that she now has a GoFundMe account to try to raise money to bring his body back to Texas. But for now, it seems like the case has been settled. This was a case, the district attorney says, of self-defense.
Liz Kreutz, thank you very much for that explanation. To some new alarm bells tonight about fake Ozempic. Looks like it, smells like it. It's not it. With the World Health Organization now warning that injecting this fake stuff could be super dangerous, maybe even deadly, because nobody knows who's making it or what's in it. Remember, this class of drugs known as semaglutides, Ozempic, Wegovy, etc., originally meant to treat diabetes, they've all become super popular in the last few years for weight loss. That's meant a global shortage, a spike in prices, and apparently a big market for bootleg versions of it. Dr. Akshay Syal is following all of this for us. How do people even get fake Ozempic in the first place?
Hey, Hallie. Well, I don't think anyone's really surprised this is happening. I mean, these drugs now have shown profound benefits in weight loss and heart health and kidney health, but they cost about the equivalent of a new iPhone every month, essentially for the rest of your life or as long as you need to be on this. So I don't think there's a lot of surprise that this is happening, Hallie, but I think people should be aware of the risks. And we're talking about diabetes medications that do affect your blood sugar. So there's some things that you should be aware of. You know, one, the treatment dose might not be right. You know, lab studies have found that there's as much as 60 to 70% difference in the dose between the fake and the real one. And this is important, Hallie, because if you take too much of it, you can cause low blood sugar, and that can cause things like a coma or even seizures. Hallie, there's also a risk of infection if the needles aren't sterile. So, you know, it may seem like a really good deal if you're getting it a lot cheaper, but there are some serious risks you want to be aware of, Hallie, if you're getting this.
Okay, so let's say you take Ozempic. How can you make sure that what you're getting is actually legit?
It's a great question, and we have some photos here of what are deemed to be counterfeit samples of semaglutide, and you can sort of see the difference. This was released by German regulators, Hallie. You can see the real one on the top with a clear label, clear and colorless. In the fake ones there, you know, to the untrained eye, may not seem like much, and this is why.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's not like one is, you know, real. That's very interesting.
It's not. And you know, the manufacturers, we got a statement from them. They actually have a website guaranteed to sort of tell you if yours is real. It's called semaglutide.com. Essentially, the name of the drug is the website. And you go on there, there's the most up-to-date information. We're talking serial numbers, lot numbers, photos. And it's going to be kept up to date because I'm assuming these fakes are going to get better and better, and it's going to be harder to tell. So really important that you check that website. Again, it's semaglutide.com. It's the name of the drug that you have.
Dr. Akshay Syal, thank you very much. That's interesting information. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, some sad news. Donald Sutherland has died at the age of 88 after being sick for quite a while. I know you recognize him from The Hunger Games, from MASH, from Pride and Prejudice, etc. His son, Kiefer Sutherland, describes him as one of the most important actors in the history of film. Number 2, an American ballerina going on trial for alleged treason today in Russia, arrested a few months ago while visiting her family there after the Russian government accused her of raising money for the Ukrainian army. Boyfriend says she only made one donation to a Ukrainian charity. Her next hearing will be held in early August. Number 3, Rite Aid is shuttering some 30 more spots across the country, working through bankruptcy. Some 500 of its stores have shut down since Rite Aid filed back in the fall. Number 4, Taylor Swift, pop icon and now firefighter? Singer Gracie Abrams telling Billboard she and Taylor Swift were having a girls' night, she says well past 6 a.m., so I guess a girls' morning, when a fire started in Swift's kitchen in New York. Apparently a candle had fallen over. Abrams says Swift managed to save the day, grabbing an extinguisher, putting the whole thing out before anyone got hurt. She does it all, folks. Number 5, AAA expects a record-breaking number of people to travel over the 4th of July. 70 million people going more than 50 miles from home during the week. That's up 5% from last year. When we come back, speaking of July 4th, it is officially summer, and that means the most extreme and most expensive weather is just ahead for us. Why that may have FEMA kind of worried. Plus, where this so-called ghost ship came from. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Western Bureau, J.J. Redick is reportedly the next head coach of the Lakers, agreeing to a 4-year deal. No previous coaching experience, but he did spend 15 seasons in the league as a player. Redick joined ESPN as a basketball commentator after his retirement a few years ago. Out of our Southern Bureau, a kind of ghosty ship watching up on the beach in Florida. The captain and crew reportedly had to abandon it a couple weeks ago after getting caught in a bad storm. They were all rescued by the Coast Guard. They're okay. But the ship was left out in the ocean, no way of tracking it until it washed up there. Very pirate vibes. And out of our Midwest Bureau, Chicago's Lollapalooza Music Festival. Big change in the lineup this year. About a month away from it, Tyler, the Creator, has pulled out. The rapper says he's bummed out. He made a commitment he can no longer keep. The festival says Megan Thee Stallion will take his place. So tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it is the staggering cost of the climate crisis, with this year already set to possibly outpace last year when it comes to the price of recovering from natural disasters. We're just entering, remember, the hottest summer months now. The strain, not just on homeowners and their budgets, but maybe on the feds, too. Here's Bill Cairns.
Should we get away from the windows?
Tornado outbreaks hitting states like Florida and Nebraska this spring.
We looked over to the northwest and the whole neighborhood's gone.
Wildfires in California and New Mexico, and now an early season tropical storm, bringing heavy rain to Mexico and Texas.
And rain poured in practically all night.
Intense weather around the country wreaking financial havoc, already costing more than $25 billion this year through mid-May, NOAA says. Not even halfway through the year, the data from the weather agency shows the country might be on track to match or even pass the cost of 28 individual billion-dollar weather disasters last year, with the most expensive season still to come.
That's the story of the summer of 2024, is we're seeing extreme weather in areas that are not used to it.
There's worry FEMA could run out of money by the end of the summer, something former FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate says is not likely, although the hot weather could drain more taxpayer money. FEMA tells us in a statement it continues to work to ensure sufficient funding and support life-saving and life-sustaining activities.
FEMA's having to go back to Congress for additional appropriations, but we're also now seeing gaps that the program cannot address. The insurance model is breaking down. Increasingly, insurance is becoming unavailable or unaffordable.
And that can hit homeowners hard. Insurance prices spiking, faster than inflation overall in the last few years, soaring an estimated 20% from 2021 to 2023 due to climate catastrophes. And in fire and flood-prone areas like California, Louisiana, and Florida, some insurers are even pulling out, leaving homeowners with limited and costly options.
I think this increase in premiums is inevitable, right? Insurance companies have to make money. Some places are just in areas where the risk is growing quickly.
Bill is joining us now. Bill, you mentioned in that story that we're heading into an even more expensive time of year for these kinds of disasters. Is that because hurricane and wildfire seasons are just beginning?
Yeah, this is the time of year as we head to the late summer that keeps the insurance companies up at night, Hallie. Let me just show you the list of the top 5 all-time weather climate disasters we've ever had in this country. And we adjusted these numbers for inflation. And when you look at it, these are all hurricanes. And look at this year, we have $25 billion. We've had 11 different disasters, $25 billion. But look at what these huge hurricanes do. They completely rewrite the books for the insurance companies. This is what going into the peak of hurricane season, August, September, October, they pray that we are going to avoid these type of numbers from any storms. And it can easily happen. Our oceans are, and all the water surrounding our country is extremely warm. We have more population at the coast, and we're growing more than ever. There's more to hit. And we haven't had a big, huge city, like a Miami or a Tampa hit in forever. And if any huge storm happens to hit those areas, it would easily make that list.
Bill Cairns, glad you're on top of it for us. Thank you. The Russian president just wrapping up a visit to Vietnam, fresh off that unusual meeting in North Korea with Kim Jong-un, first time in nearly 25 years there. Listen, Vladimir Putin, let's call it what it is. He's making some pretty strategic visits here. He wants to show off ties with friendly countries to Russia, despite the fact that Moscow has become increasingly isolated from the rest of the world over its invasion of Ukraine. In Vietnam, Putin and Vietnamese leaders agreed to cooperate more on things like energy and nuclear research. But unlike that meeting in North Korea, where Kim pledged full support of Russia in its war with Ukraine, Vietnam's trying to walk more of a fine line of maintaining relations with Russia without alienating the United States. I want to bring in now Danielle Hamamdjian, who's joining us now. Visit to Vietnam, as we've laid out, very different than the North Korea visit. No limo gifts, no other kinds of rapturous applause for Putin in these huge settings, and a diplomatic balancing act for Vietnam.
Certainly is, Hallie. No limousine, as you mentioned, but this is an opportunity, and there aren't that many, for Vladimir Putin to show that he can still get a warm welcome. Despite the international sanctions, despite being an international pariah in a country that itself has close ties with the United States, a country that hosted President Biden just last year. Now, the two countries have long historical ties, the Soviet Union having offered its support to Vietnam during its war with the U.S., but the visit also prompting this from the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi, and I want to read it to you. The U.S. Embassy saying no country should give Putin a platform to promote his war of aggression and otherwise allow him to normalize his atrocities. Putin praising the Vietnamese leader for what he says was a balanced stance on the war in Ukraine. Vietnam notoriously does not take sides, doesn't really get involved in international disputes, and that's certainly the case when it comes to Ukraine.
President Putin also had a news conference in Vietnam. What headlines should we know about, Danielle?
Oh, yeah, that's right before heading back to Russia. And of course, Vladimir Putin likes to keep his enemies guessing. He said that, and this is a message to the West, that Russia is considering changing its nuclear doctrine. The nuclear doctrine currently says that Russia can use nuclear weapons in the event of an attack that poses an existential threat to the Russian state. What exactly are these changes? He wouldn't say. Another warning, this time to South Korea. South Korea that said that it could now consider sending weapons to Ukraine. This is following the pact, the agreement between North Korea and Russia, the defense pact, a warning from Vladimir Putin that it would be a big mistake. Not only that, he said he would make decisions that the current leadership in South Korea would not like.
Danielle Hamamdjian, lots going on with Putin here now back in Moscow. Thanks for the headlines. When we come back, a history-making baseball first in Birmingham, how the MLB is honoring Willie Mays and some other Negro League greats. We will take you inside that stadium for a report coming up in just a sec. Tonight, a history-making moment for the major leagues, honoring the Negro Leagues and the legendary Willie Mays, who died earlier this week at the ballpark where Mays and other greats played. The league says the Giants and the Cardinals will be wearing Negro League throwback uniforms at the game in tribute to the teams that came before them. Our Craig Melvin sitting down with one of the MLB execs heading this up. Watch.
We really hope that young people across the globe learn about these great players, the Negro Leagues players who didn't make a lot of money, but love the game. And the game that we see on the field today is a product of that.
Julian Mitchell from our Birmingham station has more from the stadium.
Let's play ball in Birmingham. Today is the day. The Giants and Cardinals facing off at historic Rickwood Field, the oldest ballpark in America. This is a place steeped in history. Legends like the late, great Willie Mays, Satchel Paige, and more graced this field. And ahead of the game, the players spoke on the legacy those players left behind.
Shedding light on the history of this field, and for people that aren't educated on it, it just gives you an open door to see, like, what don't I know about this, which is a great opportunity as well.
I'll be overwhelmed with emotions. You know, he was another player that we threw on our back whenever I was younger, so getting to honor him and, you know, being one of the only black players out here today is going to be pretty special. And, you know, getting to represent the black community and, you know, specifically him wearing this patch, you know, hopefully we get to wear it every day. I don't know what their plans are with that, but super incredible. You know, I think everybody wishes he could be here, and you know, I'm glad that, you know, that where we are playing the Giants, you know, makes it even more special for him.
What a day this should be. Major League Baseball, these fans paying tribute to the Negro Leagues and late, great Willie Mays. I'm Julian Mitchell at Rickwood Field. Hallie, back to you.
Our thanks to Julian Mitchell for that one. That's a wrap for this hour. I will see you Sunday on the Nightly News and back here Monday on NBC News Now. For now, more coverage picks up right now. Tonight, a new tropical storm punishing the south with record temperatures and wildfires scorching the northeast and the west. We've got our teams on every angle, including the staggering cost of the climate crisis. Then, how police finally caught a man accused of 3 murders in custody now after a days-long manhunt. And dozens of people arrested while protesting at Columbia University, now off the hook. Why the DA is deciding not to prosecute tonight. And President Biden about to head to Camp David not too long from now tonight for debate prep, with that showdown just 1 week away. What sources are telling our team about how both candidates are getting ready, and it may surprise you. Plus, TikTok, for the first time, laying out its official rationale as to why it shouldn't get banned in this country, even though Congress may try to do just that. We're breaking down what it all means for your For You page, and how a low-flying Southwest plane kind of skimmed a suburb of an Oklahoma City, scaring folks who live there. What we're learning about the flight later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air tonight as Tropical Storm Alberto turns deadly, washing out parts of Texas, killing 3 people after it made landfall. Want to show it to you here. This is it coming on shore, dumping nearly 2 feet of water on Texas and Louisiana, with tornado threats in some spots and water, look at that, thigh-high for some folks trying to get through the flooding. Our teams along the Texas Gulf say some people on the beaches there are essentially trapped. There's so much water, they can't even get to their cars to get out. And radiating out of the center of that bullseye, dramatic record-setting early heat well beyond Texas, making for brutal conditions for the firefighters trying to get a handle on that deadly wildfire in New Mexico, burning out of control tonight. 2 people confirmed dead, thousands more evacuating. And that state's not catching a break. Look at this. At least 18 people are in the hospital after this huge dust storm. Look at that sky. Ended up leading to a whole bunch of crashes on a highway out there. People just couldn't see. President Biden, in just the last hour, green-lighting more federal help for hard-hit New Mexico. Our team is all over it tonight. Dana Griffin out west for us, George Solis on the East Coast. But I want to start with Guad Venegas in the center of that aforementioned bullseye in Texas. I'm looking at you. I see the wind blowing. I see people getting ready for their first night. I know that's happening around where you are and all this. Talk us through it.
Right, Hallie. So we have the high tide at this moment here in Rockport. You can see everything behind me. This is a roadway that, of course, is covered in water. We've had some of the neighbors here walk over to this side. They're standing on what the roadway was before. This is one of the affected communities where we've seen flooding, not just the flooding we're seeing from the tide here, but also inland. Down this road, there's another community where most of the houses were underwater. And this is what we saw for the last 2 days here in the region. Areas that flooded with the tide, also other areas that flooded with the rain that came in, especially down in Corpus Christi. We were there yesterday. We saw how the marina flooded there. The roadways that led to the marina had to be shut down. Authorities asking people to stay away from these flooded areas. They are pretty dangerous. I mean, what they're doing there is dangerous because the water currents are very, very strong. We spoke to some neighbors earlier today and also some yesterday, and this is what they had to say about the flooding.
As far as I know, this is about the worst. Some of these people, their poor houses, your carpet inside flooded.
I came over there to show him on my phone. I said, Bob, look, that's Coconut Heights. That's right over here. And by that time, it must have hit.
And then it hit your house?
Yeah. Wow. And I was still holding my phone there, and when he said, well, that was a tornado, and it hit already. We didn't have time to get in no thing. But it was the notice was very short.
And we just heard from Bonnie and Bob at the end there. They actually had damage in their home because of the wind. So they were talking about a tornado warning. When they saw the warning, then they heard the wind that damaged their home. It took out part of the roof and the bedroom. And today we now have confirmation of a tornado in the area where they live. And of course, we had other areas also that had some damage from the flooding. But as of now, most of that heavy rain, Hallie, has already made its way through the coastal area. But as you can see, we still have some of this high tide here, Hallie.
I sure do see that. Guad Venegas, I know, bracing for maybe a long night ahead. Thanks, Guad. I want to bring in Dana Griffin now because, Dana, out west, there is that New Mexico wildfire still out of control here, even as we're just starting fire season. What's the latest on those evacuations?
Well, you've got some 20-plus thousand people who were impacted by this, thousands evacuated, some 23,000 acres burned, 1,400 structures impacted right now. And Hallie, as you mentioned, President Biden approved that emergency declaration for the state of New Mexico to help aid the recovery in this firefight. They are providing aid and supplemental aid to the state and the tribal areas of New Mexico. I mean, just look at these images. I was scrolling through Twitter, and there's a hotel that is completely gutted. You're seeing homes, you're seeing vehicles that are gutted here. The images just incredible, these huge plumes of smoke. This is what the people, the thousands of people that have had to evacuate are seeing, and it's really devastating. It's obviously very scary because this is a fire that started burning on Monday, and here we are Thursday, still at 0% containment. Now, fire officials have not updated those numbers since yesterday, so it is likely that the fire has scorched more acres, and the containment, hopefully they will get a handle on this and try to get this fire under control. But they've had some impacts. You've had that dust storm that rolled through. You also had a fierce storm that dumped inches of rain, causing flash flooding in the area. And some may say, well, that aided in the firefight, but it's still preventing fire crews from getting to certain areas. And I think tonight, Hallie, that's the biggest concern.
Clearly. Dana Griffin, keep us posted. Thank you. George Solis is live for us on the other side of the country, where it is, I mean, everywhere it's the first day of summer, but where you are, it is unbelievably hot. It's not just record temperatures. We know it gets hot in the summer. It's that it's happening so early here now on day one.
That's exactly right. And I hope you're a fan of The Office, because the first thing that comes to mind is that classic scene where Michael Scott has the steel drums in his office and he's playing that cover from The Merry Men and just feeling hot, hot, hot. That is the only way I can describe what it feels like out here right now. And to think there's actually a little bit of a reprieve. It's about 88 degrees, but that feels like temperature. That's the problem. And we've had that consistent now for the last several days. And that is the concern from the officials here, which is why here in New York City, you had officials dismiss schools, some schools early. You had them giving students cold lunches, and all those cooling centers have been open. All kidding aside, obviously, this could be a very health emergency for those people who aren't prepared, making sure that they are drinking that water, wearing that light clothing, and finding shade as needed. Now, earlier today, we were here in Central Park talking to people who were taking in the sights and staying cool, and they gave us their tips and tricks on how they're beating this excruciating heat. Take a listen.
This isn't anything new. We're from Houston visiting, so this is actually nice weather. You guys aren't used to it like we are in Houston, and sometimes, and especially with the dry heat, it's easy to get dehydrated, but you don't realize it.
Yeah, and those guys don't count. I mean, they say they're used to this
George,
heat,
you can't
for others
say
here,
that.
it is
You can't say they don't count.
Well, they said they're used to the heat, and this is nothing to them.
I
They're from Houston. They say they're used to it, but they're still taking those precautions, drinking that water. He was with his family, so obviously taking it very seriously, and so is the city, and pretty much anywhere in the tri-state where this heat has been boiling us for the last several days.
I love how you found the one person in your MOS who wasn't hot in New York today. But George, so amazing accomplishment to you and the team. George Solis, definitely baking out there. Stay safe, friend. Smart, hydrate. Appreciate it. Thanks. You. So let's get you some other news now, especially out in the Midwest, where in Arkansas, a man's in custody after a multi-day, multi-state, multi-agency manhunt for him that started down in Alabama. We're talking about 50-year-old Stacey Drake. Arkansas State Police say he was found in the woods about 50 miles outside Little Rock. He's suspected in connection with 3 homicides in Oklahoma stemming from 2 separate carjackings earlier this week. He's also wanted in Alabama and Tuscaloosa for a killing back in May. Listen.
I don't know when we will get him back. He will eventually be in the Tuscaloosa County Jail. He will eventually answer for these crimes, whether by pleading guilty or standing trial.
Priya Sridhar is joining us now. Priya, what else are we finding out tonight about this suspect, his history, and where this all goes?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Well, 50-year-old Stacey Lee Drake is now being named and identified as a person of interest or a suspect in 4 different murders over 2 states over the last 5 weeks. But one thing authorities are making clear is that even though he's just being accused of these crimes, he already has a fairly lengthy criminal record that spans almost 30 years. He is a convicted felon, and he's been convicted of carjackings, assault, and robberies. And one thing that they say is extremely problematic when it comes to a person like him is that they say that this pattern is showing that his violence and his criminal activity is actually escalating. Let's take a listen to what a captain from the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Department had to say about his past.
He's got an extensive history in multiple states, Arizona, Oklahoma, the old cases from Alabama. He was also a federal inmate at different points in his career, and there were outstanding pending federal charges on him for violating his parole at this time.
So the captain there in the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Department said one of the reasons that Stacey Lee Drake was able to evade authorities for so long was that they say that he murdered someone in Tuscaloosa back on May 14th and actually stole that victim's car, drove towards Oklahoma. But at the time, he had only been in Tuscaloosa for a week or 2, and they say that he was transient. He was a member of the homeless community, and he was operating under a different name. Once he made it to Oklahoma, authorities there in El Reno, Oklahoma, say that he murdered another victim on Friday and took his car and then drove 200 miles east to Gans, Oklahoma, where then on Tuesday they say 2 more people were murdered by Stacey Lee Drake at a gas station. They say he then took one of those victims' cars and drove to Morrilton, Arkansas, and they were able to track down the car that he took from Gans, Oklahoma, the Arkansas State Police say, to a Motel 6 about an hour northwest of Little Rock. And that's when he basically disappeared for the last 2 days. So last night, Arkansas State Police said that they believed he was still in the area. They believe that he purchased some camping gear and he was in the woods. So today, finally, at around 10 a.m., they were able to apprehend him. And I actually got an opportunity to speak to the victim from the Tuscaloosa murder, the son of that victim, and ask him how he felt about all of this. And he said that his father was beloved. This has been obviously a traumatizing month for him, and he just feels so sad that after his father was murdered, that now this suspect is also being tied to 3 more killings, Hallie.
Priya Sridhar, thank you very much for that. Tonight, dozens of people arrested during those huge Columbia University protests back in April were just told they will not be prosecuted. I want to show you some of these people speaking outside court after the DA's office says they don't have enough evidence to bring cases against them. But the effects of these college protests are still being felt by the schools, at least by Emerson College, now planning layoffs because of an enrollment decline that they blame partly on those pro-Palestinian demonstrations. In an email from the school president obtained by the Boston Globe, he attributes these layoffs, the staff reduction, to student protests targeting yield events and campus tours, and then the negative press and social media from those demonstrations and arrests, also citing things like national enrollment trends and issues with federal student aid. Antonia Hilton is outside court where those Columbia hearings have been taking place. She is joining us now. Broader context here, Antonia. This was headline news for weeks, these pro-Palestinian demonstrations at college campuses coast to coast. There was a question mark for some of these students as to any potential consequences when these arrests happen. Now we know about some of them. What is next for the folks who saw these charges dismissed today?
Well, for the vast majority of them, they're no longer going to have to come back here to Manhattan Criminal Court. Their charges are dismissed, and their real problem now is with Columbia University. they're going to enter into a series of disciplinary hearings. And the students tell me they're not sure yet if they can even have attorneys with them. And so they're going to have to make the case to the school that they should be allowed to return at some point, whether that's this fall or some point in the future. Some of the students, however, about 14 people affiliated who were present at Hamilton Hall that night when the NYPD entered, they were offered deals where essentially if they agreed to good behavior for 6 months, they didn't commit any other crimes, then their charges would be dismissed. Those students did not accept that deal. So they are actually going to have to come right back here on July 25th and continue the process. So, you know, this is sort of a mixed situation for the students, but certainly when it comes to their education, that's very much on the line here, because the last we heard from Columbia, they were pretty intent on expelling any student that actually entered that building, Hallie.
We mentioned also some of the fallout now at Emerson. Do we know quantifiably whether that school stands alone in seeing what it cites as enrollment issues as a result of these protests?
Right now, it's a bit unclear. It'll be interesting to see if other universities take a look at their enrollment numbers, get ready for the fall, and then make a similar argument to what we're seeing Emerson say here. What we do know for sure is that administrators across the board, from the Ivy League through the country, they're saying that they're having problems with fundraising because of the pro-Palestinian protests. They have community of alumni, essentially, who are saying that they're going to hold funds back because they're upset with the way that universities have handled all of this. And they're anxious to get some of that money, frankly. They need it for programs, for new buildings, for renovations to dorms. And that's a big part of the business of running a school. And so a lot of the schools are focused on how do we rebuild those alum relations so that we can kind of get that money flowing back in, Hallie.
Antonia Hilton live for us there outside court in Manhattan. Antonia, thank you. Got to get to some breaking news coming into us tonight from out in the Bay Area, with the FBI and some other federal agencies raiding the home of the Oakland mayor. Look at some of the video. It's the bottom of your screen. You see where we're going to drop the banner. You can see some of the activity there down there. You see them loading things into the trunk. Why? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. Tom Winter is joining us now. What do we know, Tom?
Right, you're talking about Sheng Tao is the mayor of Oakland, facing a recall effort, which is not connected to this, Hallie, or at least not believed to be. You know, it kind of is summarizes the whole Oakland experience right now for the residents there, where their district attorney, where their mayor, both undergoing recall efforts. That stemming from issues of crime initially, even though crime in Oakland is down this year. Specific to this search, we actually don't know a lot. So to take the audience a little bit behind the curtain of how we do what we do, typically, when a search like this happens and you see documents being taken out of a house, you see the evidence response team there, and there are other federal law enforcement agencies that are believed to be a part of this, you start to look back at what are some of the stories that we've done, that other news organizations have done over the past several months, and could there be a tripwire there as it pertains to breaking federal law? And that's an area for us to dig into, and we start calling around to various attorneys and all the different types of folks we would speak to for something like this and kind of come up with a subject matter. It's not so clear in this instance what that thing might be that would lead us to at least have some sort of a sense of what this search is all about. But as I mentioned in the beginning, this is really a challenge for Oakland, which has been going through, obviously, some very difficult times. They're losing their baseball team. Crime, as I mentioned, is down this year. Robberies, which were a significant concern, have dropped fairly dramatically there, over 50%, as the California Highway Patrol and other police agencies have been assisting local police there. But it still remains a problem. It's still too high in a lot of people's eyes there, and this is going to be an ongoing concern for them. Whenever we've seen a politician in a mayoral office get to this type of attention and this type of heat, it typically means that it's something that becomes a distraction for that particular city for some time. Of course, always important to remember, Hallie, and always important to keep in mind in these instances, just because somebody's been searched doesn't mean they've been charged with a crime, doesn't mean that they necessarily will be charged with a crime. It's possible others around them, or it's possible no charges could ever be filed. Rudy Giuliani getting searched by the FBI in New York, great example. No charges were ever filed in that investigation.
That's true. Tom Winter, good point. Thank you very much. I know you'll keep us posted if we get any more. So in the next couple of hours, not long from now, actually, tonight, President Biden will head to Camp David, where sources say he's planning to hunker down for the next few days to get ready for the first presidential debate of this season. And former President Trump, he's doing his own don't call it prep with policy talks, as his team says, with folks including Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who's on the possible VP pick shortlist. and who's at a fundraiser with Mr. Trump as we speak. That debate a week from today, it'll be head-to-head, mano a mano, one-on-one. You get it, because RFK Jr., according to host network CNN, did not qualify to get on stage, failing to meet requirements on polling and state ballot access. Kennedy calls the exclusion undemocratic and cowardly, but doesn't seem like there's much he can do about it. NBC's Monica Alba is following all of it for us tonight. So give us a preview of the conversation over the next 6 days, which is what these two candidates are doing to get ready from what will be, and let's put it in context here, the biggest primetime moment of this election season yet.
And coming months earlier than it has in past cycles. So certainly, Hallie, a lot to watch for here. And we know that President Biden, this is the first time he'll be facing former President Trump as the current president of the United States. So he can use some of the perks that incumbency will bring, like going to Camp David, like past presidents have done to prepare for these kinds of debates. He's going to be heading there tonight. And as you mentioned, he will be there, we expect, for much of the next week. And of course, he still has his day job. So he's still going to be doing meetings related to the presidency and getting national security updates and briefings. And he could still potentially do an event or two or depart Camp David for something to make remarks if the White House feels like he needs to do that. But for the most part, we expect him to really be a part of these intensive sessions with somebody who is a familiar name, probably, which is his former White House Chief of Staff, Ron Klain, who's really going to be leading the prep in addition to a lot of really close advisors. And in terms of the Biden campaign strategy here, they say they really want to lay out this contrasting vision with former President Trump, but they are preparing for the really unscripted moments too. And those are some of the ones we are usually talking about and focusing on the most the next day. Now, for former President Trump's part, as you alluded to and as you've been reporting on for days now, Hallie, there is no formal prep to speak of, but at the same time, we understand from the former president's team that there are these informal policy sessions that are going to be going on topics that they expect will come up. And then they also point to what he does regularly, those long rallies. They say that that counts as his prep, and they claim and have been talking about really these super unsubstantiated things. The former president, for now weeks, has been trying to argue that the current president will somehow be on some kind of substances or drugs at this debate, again, without providing any kind of proof for that. And that's something he will probably continue to point to leading up to the debate. Hallie.
Ahead of this debate, Monica, this issue of so-called cheap fakes has really burst onto the scene in a big way. That is the Biden camp's term for these clips from opponents that recontextualize videos without AI, without much editing. That's why they're not deep fakes. They're, again, cheap fakes. There's this video from the D-Day ceremony in France. Now, on the left, we're showing you, pulled from social media, what looks like the president nearly doubling over. That clip on the left stops there. If you play the full clip, it shows President Biden looking for his chair. Seconds later, obviously, you can see it on the right, he sits down in it. Then you have this video from the G7 summit in Italy, with one video shared by groups, including the RNC, suggesting the president may have just wandered off. You see that video. In the full version, if you let it play, he's greeting parachuters who had just landed. Now, this one went so viral that even the British Prime Minister stepped in to defend President Biden. And then at the White House's Juneteenth celebration, commenters called out the president for what they described, this is it here, kind of a strange non-response during a concert at the White House. The White House has not specifically addressed this one, but talk us through the dynamics at play, Monica, and what you're hearing from the various camps about this.
Yeah, and you know, this is something that the White House and the Biden campaign, both of them have become far more vocal on this. Yeah. You know, in the past, there would be videos maybe similar to this from similar accounts that are amplified by the former president that they wouldn't necessarily weigh in on or touch. And now they're saying that because there have been so many in recent weeks, they feel like they need to. And another example, adding to that list that you just pointed out, was something that we saw when President Biden was with former President Obama at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, where former President Obama walks over to President Biden and the two men walk off the stage together. And really, the White House is just trying to point to this as saying that's something that isn't edited, but it is, to your point, not put in the correct context. And it is deceptive in what the accounts that are trying to portray this as an elderly man and the president needing help or needing to be guided by former President Obama. They simply say that that is wrong. And what you are seeing from the Biden campaign and their social media accounts is they're now pointing to moments where they feel that Donald Trump has made mistakes in public, whether it be different kinds of events and where he has confused different names, or when he has really tripped over his remarks or made claims that they feel are so outlandish and ridiculous that they want to be highlighting those. So they have now made a more concerted effort to pinpoint those on their social media accounts. They're even putting together montages and amplifying those of times when they say Donald Trump appears confused or like he's wandering off a stage in recent years. They're pointing to the fact that at some point recently, Donald Trump called his White House doctor Ronnie Johnson instead of Ronnie Jackson. And they're also just really trying to say that there are plenty of instances where there are questions that are raised about Donald Trump's own behavior, even if that is what the flip side is trying to do about President Biden. Hallie.
Monica Alba, boy, a lot to get into today. Thank you for walking us through it all. Appreciate it, friend. So tonight, for the very first time, TikTok's officially laying out its argument for why it shouldn't get banned in this country in what is basically the company's opening shot in its battle with Congress. They're releasing some details about several confidential meetings they say they had with the feds in a new legal brief that's just been made public. Meetings where TikTok says it tried to address some of the Biden administration's concerns about the company's Chinese-based ownership, but detailing in these documents how the federal government allegedly stopped talking in any kind of substantive way to TikTok back in September of 2022 without ever explaining why. The documents are laying out the start of what is expected to be a huge legal showdown between the federal government and one of the biggest and most popular apps in the country, all after President Biden signed a bill into law that would force the TikTok's Chinese-based owner to sell off TikTok or else see the app banned in the U.S. altogether. Danny Savalos is joining us now. Laying the groundwork is the phrase that comes to mind here for TikTok, because that is what it seems like it is doing with this first legal filing. Is that fair?
That's exactly what this is. This is an opening brief, and it's unusual because the relevant the law here requires this case to be filed in appellate court, not in like the trial court where you'd proceed before a jury and have an actual trial on the merits. Instead, because TikTok wants to challenge this all, they have to go to appellate court, and in appellate court you file what's called an opening brief. And that's what they've done. They've laid out all their arguments in one long document explaining their position.
What is the government going to do here? Because I think that they are due to file something by, I think, the end of next month. So there's some time. But what would your anticipation be for how the feds might respond?
This is very standard. You get a briefing schedule. Okay. This is their opening brief, and the government will respond. And I expect they'll argue that, look, this law that Congress passed was within Congress's power. It doesn't violate the First Amendment. It's not a bill of attainder. It doesn't violate the Equal Protection Clause. This is something within Congress's power to pass, whether it be through the Commerce Clause. It's not constitutionally suspect, and it's a valid exercise of congressional power.
Timeline-wise, Danny, we talk about the back and forth here. There is a clock that is ticking. TikTok and ByteDance, its Chinese-based owner, don't have forever to try to figure something out here. How does that play into the court back and forth?
That's right, and that's a key part of their argument, that in the amount of time given to them, they couldn't possibly divest. So it effectively is an act of Congress getting rid of TikTok, giving them a choice that is no choice at all. So the timeline here is critical. That's why the briefing has happened relatively quickly. That is probably due to an expedited schedule. So this may move a lot faster than you would ordinarily see a case like this move through the appellate courts here in the appellate court for the District of Columbia.
Danny Savalos, thank you very much. So listen, breaking in just the last hour or so here, we're getting reports of a close call involving a Southwest flight in Oklahoma, a plane that flew pretty low over a suburb of Oklahoma City, just hundreds of feet above houses in town, which scared some folks there. NBC's Tom Costello is joining us now with more. We're showing the tracking from FlightAware. Explain to us what we're looking at, Tom.
So this was Southwest Flight 4069. It was coming from Las Vegas into Oklahoma City at about 12:30 a.m., midnight 30 local time just this morning. And suddenly, as it was coming into runway 13, it came in way too low. In fact, so low, 525 feet off the ground, that low altitude warnings were triggered inside the control tower there at the Oklahoma City airport. They radioed the pilot and said, "Is everything okay?" The pilot said, "Yes, going around." They circled around, had normal altitude, normal speed, and then landed on a different runway, and everybody was safe. But the question is, why was this plane, in the words of NBC News aviation expert Captain John Cox, coming in very low and very slow when it was 8 miles out from the runway? Far too low and far too slow when you're so far out. The FAA says it's investigating. Southwest Airlines, in a statement to NBC News, says, in fact, that it is working with the FAA to understand and address any irregularities with the aircraft's approach to the airport. All Southwest planes are 737s, so the question really is not a matter of equipment. The matter is what might have been going on in the cockpit that led that crew to come in at an altitude and a speed that was clearly not optimal given the circumstances. Again, 12:30 in the morning, landing from Las Vegas into Oklahoma City.
Tom Costello, very interesting. Thanks very much for breaking that down for us. Coming up, the crackdown on one popular beach spot, why Cape Cod's putting some new rules in place for beaches ahead of 4th of July. Plus, what's essentially shutting down car dealerships coast to coast for day number 2. In just the last couple of hours, L.A. County officials say a USC student will not be charged in stabbing and killing a man on Greek Row because the district attorney says his office believes the student acted out of genuine fear for his life in this confrontation between the student and the man Monday night outside a frat house. According to police, the student saw the man breaking into a car and told police the man said he had a gun. We're also seeing a little bit now of where that happened on the map of USC's frat row. Liz Kreutz is joining us now for more. What else do we know about who's involved here and where this goes now?
Well, hey, Hallie, I just got back from the courthouse where we learned that charges were going to be dropped against this 19-year-old University of Southern California student, Ivan Gallegos. Police say that he was with 2 friends on Greek Row when they saw this man, a homeless man, breaking into a car. Some kind of altercation happened. Ivan told police that this homeless man had said that he had a gun, and so Ivan had a knife and allegedly stabbed this man multiple times fatally. There had been a question about whether or not this was self-defense or an act of aggression. Ivan Gallegos, the student, had said this was self-defense. And, Hallie, we've now learned that the DA has decided that that is the case. He says in a statement, George Gascon, the district attorney, says, "We believe that Mr. Gallegos' actions were driven by a genuine fear for his life and the lives of others. Our heart goes out to this deceased family's friends and everyone impacted by this tragic incident." I know that the family of Ivan Gallegos was there at the courthouse and then making their way to the jail where he should be released this afternoon. As for what's next, Hallie, I think essentially this is over now, although you could see some kind of legal action potentially from Xavier Surf's family. This is the homeless man that was killed. His mother has been posting on social media and says that she now has a GoFundMe account to try to raise money to bring his body back to Texas. But for now, it seems like the case has been settled. This was a case, the district attorney says, of self-defense.
Liz Kreutz, thank you very much for that explanation. New alarm bells tonight about fake Ozempic. Looks like it, smells like it, but it is not it. With the World Health Organization warning that injecting this fake stuff could be really dangerous, maybe even deadly, because nobody knows who's making it or what's in it. Remember, this class of drugs known as semaglutides, Ozempic, Wegovy, etc., originally meant to treat diabetes, they've become super popular in the last few years for weight loss. That's meant a global shortage, a spike in prices, and apparently a big market for bootleg versions of it. Dr. Akshay Syal is following all of this for us. How do people even get fake Ozempic in the first place?
Hey, Hallie. Well, I don't think anyone's really surprised this is happening. I mean, these drugs now have shown profound benefits in weight loss and heart health and kidney health, but they cost about the equivalent of a new iPhone every month, essentially for the rest of your life or as long as you need to be on this. So I don't think there's a lot of surprise that this is happening, Hallie, but I think people should be aware of the risks. And we're talking about diabetes medications that do affect your blood sugar. So there's some things that you should be aware of. You know, one, the treatment dose might not be right. You know, lab studies have found that there's as much as 60 to 70% difference in the dose between the fake and the real one. And this is important, Hallie, because if you take too much of it, you can cause low blood sugar, and that can cause things like a coma or even seizures. Hallie, there's also a risk of infection if the needles aren't sterile. So, it may seem like a really good deal if you're getting it a lot cheaper, but there are some serious risks you want to be aware of, Hallie, if you're getting this.
Okay, so let's say you take Ozempic. How can you make sure that what you're getting is actually legit?
It's a great question, and we have some photos here of what are deemed to be counterfeit samples of semaglutide, and you can sort of see the difference. This was released by German regulators, Hallie. You can see the real one on the top with the clear label, clear and colorless. In the fake ones there, to the untrained eye, may not seem like much, and this is why.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's not like one is, real. That's very interesting.
It's not. And the manufacturers, we got a statement from them. They actually have a website guaranteed to sort of tell you if yours is real. It's called semaglutide.com. Essentially, the name of the drug is the website. And you go on there, there's the most up-to-date information. We're talking serial numbers, lot numbers, photos. And it's going to be kept up to date because I'm assuming these fakes are going to get better and better, and it's going to be harder to tell. So really important that you check that website. Again, it's semaglutide.com. It's the name of the drug that you have.
Dr. Akshay Sayal, thank you very much. That's interesting information. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, have you heard about this Cape Cod crackdown on who can use the beaches there this summer? That's after reports of fighting, drinking parties, and what town officials call out-of-control crowds and violence. Now they're only letting people with certain parking passes get onto beach parking lots for the 4th of July and say there's going to be zero tolerance for alcohol, drugs, loud music, and generally unsafe behavior at the beach. Number 2, car dealers all across the country are dealing with computer outages after this software and tech provider CDK experienced a cyber outage for the 2nd day in a row. CDK tells Reuters it's working to get back up and running as fast as possible. The company temporarily shut down all of its systems briefly yesterday to investigate this cyber incident. Number 3, Amazon announcing it's ditching nearly all of its plastic air pillows in its packaging in North America. Instead, the company will replace those plastic bubble things with paper fillers made from 100% recycled content. That'll help Amazon remove nearly 15 billion plastic pillows from its processes annually. Number 4, Queen's music catalog is in the process of getting acquired by Sony Music for more than $1.25 billion, according to Variety. And if you're like, whoa, that is a lot of money, that is because that is a lot of money. It's one of the biggest deals ever. The only revenue reportedly not covered is for live performances, which 2 of the band's founding members will get to keep. Queen's catalog is one of the most valuable of that classic rock era. Think about Bohemian Rhapsody, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, tons of hits. Number 5, AAA is expecting a record-breaking number of people to travel this 4th of July. More than 70 million of us set to go more than 50 miles from home, up 5% from last year. When we come back, a new investigation tonight in India after illegally brewed liquor reportedly killed dozens of people. What officials think it may have been tainted with. Plus, the freak accident stopping one Olympic cyclist from competing in Paris. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of India, a government spokesperson says at least 36 people have died. More than 60 had to go to the hospital after drinking illegally brewed liquor in the southern part of the country. It apparently had methanol in it. The CDC says that's poisonous. Officials say they're looking into this. There have been some arrests, and it's not even the first time something like this has happened. Dozens of people died a couple years ago from something similar. Out of Chile today, at least 2 rail workers were killed when a freight train crashed head-on with a train on a test run. 9 people were hurt. Officials say they're trying to figure out what happened here. They say the driver of the test train and a railway operator were detained. And out of the UK today, track cyclist Katie Archibald, a 2-time Olympic champion, says she will not be competing at Paris because of a freak accident. She says she tripped over a step in a garden and ended up fracturing 2 leg bones and dislocating her ankle. She had to get surgery, and that puts her out of commission for the games this summer. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight it is the staggering cost of the climate crisis, with this year already set to possibly outpace last year when it comes to the price of recovering from natural disasters. We're just entering, remember, the hottest summer months now. The strain, not just on homeowners and their budgets, but maybe on the feds, too. Here's Bill Cairns.
Should we get away from the windows?
Tornado outbreaks hitting states like Florida and Nebraska this spring.
We looked over to the northwest and the whole neighborhood's gone.
Wildfires in California and New Mexico, and now an early season tropical storm, bringing heavy rain to Mexico and Texas.
And rain poured in crackling all night.
Intense weather around the country wreaking financial havoc, already costing more than $25 billion this year through mid-May, NOAA says. Not even halfway through the year, the data from the weather agency shows the country might be on track to match or even pass the cost of 28 individual billion-dollar weather disasters last year, with the most expensive season still to come.
That's the story of the summer 2024, is we're seeing extreme weather in areas that are not used to it.
There's worry FEMA could run out of money by the end of the summer, something former FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate says is not likely, although the hot weather could drain more taxpayer money. FEMA tells us in a statement it continues to work to ensure sufficient funding and support life-saving and life-sustaining activities.
FEMA's having to go back to Congress for additional appropriations, but we're also now seeing gaps that the program cannot address. The insurance model is breaking down. Increasingly, insurance is becoming unavailable or unaffordable.
And that can hit homeowners hard. Insurance prices spiking, faster than inflation overall in the last few years, soaring an estimated 20% from 2021 to 2023 due to climate catastrophes. And in fire and flood-prone areas like California, Louisiana, and Florida, some insurers are even pulling out, leaving homeowners with limited and costly options.
I think this increase in premiums is inevitable, right? Insurance companies have to make money. Some places are just in areas where the risk is growing quickly.
Bill is joining us now. Bill, you mentioned in that story that we're heading into an even more expensive time of year for these kinds of disasters. Is that because hurricane and wildfire seasons are just beginning?
Yeah, this is the time of year as we head to the late summer that keeps the insurance companies up at night, Hallie. Let me just show you the list of the top 5 all-time weather climate disasters we've ever had in this country, and we adjusted these numbers for inflation. And when you look at it, these are all hurricanes. And look at this year, we have $25 billion. We've had 11 different disasters, $25 billion. But look at what these huge hurricanes do. They completely rewrite the books for the insurance companies. This is what going into the peak of hurricane season, August, September, October, they pray that we are going to avoid these type of numbers from any storms. And it can easily happen. Our oceans are, and all the water surrounding our country is extremely warm. We have more population at the coast, and we're growing more than ever. There's more to hit. And we haven't had a big, huge city, you know, like a Miami or a Tampa hit in forever. And if any huge storm happens to hit those areas, it would easily make that list.
Bill Cairns, glad you're on top of it for us. Thank you. Coming up here on the show, new anger over an alleged assault in France, how it could shape elections there a little more than a week away. New anger in France tonight and a possible reckoning with anti-Semitism in that country after a 12-year-old girl, identified by the French prime minister and a religious leader as Jewish, was allegedly raped by 2 boys around her age. French police confirmed the crime. They did not release any details about the victim, with protesters in the streets of Paris now to denounce the attack. You can see the crowds here. It's happening as anti-Semitic incidents are surging in France ever since the war in Gaza began, raising questions now over how this attack might affect a surprise snap election in that country, with voters headed to the polls in a week and a half. NBC's Yasmin Vasugian is covering this one for us. What else can you tell us about what happened?
Some horrific details here, Hallie, to share. Let's talk through the 3 individuals, the 3 boys, 12 and 13 years of age, 2 of them charged. Let me read for you some of the charges here. Aggravated gang rape on a minor younger than 15 years of age. Violence and public insult motivated by religion, death threats, as well as you mentioned how a religious leader and lawyer identified this young girl as being Jewish. That was not the identification that came from the investigators. Investigators actually wanted to keep her identity anonymous, so not identifying her name nor her religious affiliation. The 3rd boy, by the way, was charged with being a witness to the crime, but not necessarily charged with the charges that I just listed for you. Let me walk you through what it is the girl told investigators. She was walking through a park in the suburbs of Paris with a friend. The 3 boys approached her, dragged her to a more kind of location that was far away from where she was. Her friend was a witness to this attack. They then subsequently raped her. Her friend helping identify the three individuals, the three young boys that were subsequently charged. You talk about the surge, Hal, of anti-Semitism and also attacks based on anti-Semitism in France. Let's talk about the numbers here. 284% surge over the last couple of years. Since October 7th alone, up 74%. So certainly that country is reeling right now. You talk about those rallies that happened, those protests. Wednesday was a major rally in reaction to this rape of this young girl by these two boys. Another rally planned for Friday as well, amidst a very major political moment in that country, Hallie.
Pull on that thread a bit, Yasmin, because we've seen those crowds of demonstrators that are out. Those snap elections are 10 days away, and now this attack seems to be putting anti-Semitism at the forefront here.
Yeah, it certainly is. And listen, Marine Le Pen, who is a leader of the far-right movement, has talked a lot about kind of anti-immigration, right? But now they're kind of using this as part of their campaigns in the lead up to the snap parliamentary election. Let me just read for you a little bit of what we're hearing from both the left and the right in the run up to this election. So from the far left leader with regards to this recent rape by these two boys on this young girl, saying this is anti-Semitic racism. From the far right, Marine Le Pen herself saying that voters must keep in mind the stigmatization of Jews by the far left. So they are certainly trying to politicize a very tragic and horrific moment that happened to this young girl in this country as these rallies are ongoing in a very big political moment for that country, Hallie.
Yasmin Vasugian, thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Also overseas, the Russian president just wrapping up a visit to Vietnam, fresh off that unusual meeting in North Korea with Kim Jong-un, first time in nearly 25 years there. Listen, Vladimir Putin, let's call it what it is. He's making some pretty strategic visits here. He wants to show off ties with friendly countries to Russia, despite the fact that Moscow has become increasingly isolated from the rest of the world over its invasion of Ukraine. In Vietnam, Putin and Vietnamese leaders agreed to cooperate more on things like energy and nuclear research. But unlike that meeting in North Korea, where Kim pledged full support of Russia in its war with Ukraine, Vietnam's trying to walk more of a fine line of maintaining relations with Russia without alienating the United States. I want to bring in now Danielle Hamamjian, who's joining us now. Visit to Vietnam, as we've laid out, very different than the North Korea visit. No limo gifts, no other kinds of rapturous applause for Putin in these huge settings, and a diplomatic balancing act for Vietnam.
Certainly is, Hallie. No limousine, as you mentioned, but this is an opportunity, and there aren't that many, for Vladimir Putin to show that he can still get a warm welcome. Despite the international sanctions, despite being an international pariah in a country that itself has close ties with the United States, the country that hosted President Biden just last year. Now, the two countries have long historical ties, the Soviet Union having offered its support to Vietnam during its war with the U.S. But the visit also prompting this from the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi, and I want to read it to you. The U.S. Embassy saying no country should give Putin a platform to promote his war of aggression and otherwise allow him to normalize his atrocities. Putin praising the Vietnamese leader for what he says was a balanced stance on the war in Ukraine. Vietnam notoriously does not take sides, doesn't really get involved in international disputes, and that's certainly the case when it comes to Ukraine.
President Putin also had a news conference in Vietnam. What headlines should we know about, Danielle?
Oh, yeah, that's right before heading back to Russia. And of course, Vladimir Putin likes to keep his enemies guessing. He said that, and this is a message to the West, that Russia is considering changing its nuclear doctrine. The nuclear doctrine currently says that Russia can use nuclear weapons in the event of an attack that poses an existential threat to the Russian state. What exactly are these changes? He wouldn't say. Another warning, this time to South Korea. South Korea that said that it could now consider sending weapons to Ukraine. This is following the pact, the agreement between North Korea and Russia, the defense pact. A warning from Vladimir Putin that it would be a big mistake. Not only that, he said he would make decisions that the current leadership in South Korea would not like.
Danielle Hamamjian, lots going on with Putin here now back in Moscow. Thanks for the headlines. When we come back, a history-making baseball first in Birmingham, how the MLB is honoring Willie Mays and some other Negro League greats. We will take you inside that stadium for a report coming up in just a sec. Tonight, a history-making moment for the major leagues, honoring the Negro Leagues and the legendary Willie Mays, who died earlier this week at the ballpark where Mays and other greats played. The league says the Giants and the Cardinals will be wearing Negro League throwback uniforms at the game in tribute to the teams that came before them. Our Craig Melvin sitting down with one of the MLB execs heading this up. Watch.
We really hope that young people across the globe learn about these great players, the Negro Leagues players who didn't make a lot of money, but love the game. And the game that we see on the field today is a product of that.
Julian Mitchell from our Birmingham station has more from the stadium.
Let's play ball in Birmingham. Today is the day. The Giants and Cardinals facing off at historic Rickwood Field, the oldest ballpark in America. This is a place steeped in history. Legends like the late, great Willie Mays, Satchel Paige, and more graced this field. And ahead of the game, the players spoke on the legacy those players left behind.
Shedding light on the history of this field, and for people that aren't educated on it, it just gives you an open door to see, like, what don't I know about this, which is a great opportunity as well.
I'll be overwhelmed with emotions. You know, he was another player that we threw on our back whenever I was younger. So getting to honor him and, you know, being one of the only black players out here today is going to be pretty special. And, you know, getting to represent the black community and, you know, specifically him wearing this patch. You know, hopefully we get to wear it every day. I don't know what their plans are with that, but super incredible. You know, I think everybody wishes he could be here, and you know, I'm glad that, you know, that where we are playing the Giants, you know, makes it even more special for him.
What a day this should be. Major League Baseball, these fans paying tribute to the Negro Leagues and the late, great Willie Mays. I'm Julian Mitchell at Rickwood Field. Hallie, back to you.
Our thanks to Julian Mitchell for that one. That's a wrap for this hour. I will see you Sunday on the Nightly News and back here Monday on NBC News Now. For now, more coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.